In 1920, two brothers started making shoes in their mother's laundry room in a small German town called Herzogenaurach. By 1970, they owned the feet of every athlete on Earth. Then, a kid from Oregon started selling Japanese sneakers out of the trunk of his car. He had no factories, no athletes, no reputation. But he had something the empire didn't. He had hunger. What happened next is the longest, bloodiest brand war in modern history. A 100-year siege that crossed world wars, shattered families, weaponized hip-hop, turned a basketball rookie into $1 billion weapon, and proved one thing over and over again. Empires don't fall because someone outspends them. They fall because they stop being afraid. This is the classified file on Nike versus Adidas, the war that never ended. Herzogenaurach, Germany, 1920, Adolf Dassler, everyone called him Adi, started stitching shoes by hand in his mother's washroom. No electricity, no machinery, just leather, thread, and obsession. His brother Rudolf joined him, the salesman, the talker, the one who could move product while Adi bent over the workbench, perfecting the curve of a sole. Together, they were unstoppable. By the early 1930s, the Dassler brothers' shoe factory was outfitting German athletes at every level. They joined the Nazi Party, not out of ideology, but access. The Hitler Youth wore Dassler shoes. The Wehrmacht wore Dassler shoes. And in 1936, at the Berlin Olympics, the games Hitler built to prove Aryan supremacy, Adi Dassler did something extraordinary. He convinced a black American sprinter named Jesse Owens to wear his shoes. Owens won 4 gold medals in Dassler shoes in Hitler's stadium. The brand went global overnight. But the thing about brothers is, eventually they stopped sharing. World War II didn't just split Europe, it split the Dasslers. During an Allied bombing raid, Adi and his wife hid in a bomb shelter. Rudolf and his family were already inside. Adi muttered something. Accounts differ on the exact words, but Rudolf heard it as a direct attack, a betrayal. From that moment, the trust was dead. After the war, both brothers faced denazification tribunals. Rudolf was accused of being an SS informant. Some historians believe Adi testified against him. Rudolf believed it until the day he died. In 1949, they shattered the company in half. Adi took his half and called it Adidas. Rudolf crossed the river that ran through Herzogenaurach and founded Puma. The town itself split. You were Adidas or Puma. The butcher, the baker, the priest, every shop, every family, chosen sides. They called it the town of bent necks because the first thing anyone did when meeting a stranger was look down at their shoes. 2 brothers, 1 river, and a wound that never healed. But Adidas won the divorce. Through the 1950s and 60s, Adidas didn't just lead the market, they were the market. Adi Dassler's son, Horst, turned out to be a political genius. He built backroom relationships with FIFA, the IOC, and every major sports federation on the planet. Adidas supplied the official match ball for every World Cup from 1970 onward. Their 3 stripes were on the feet of soccer legends, Olympic sprinters, and boxing champions. If you competed at the highest level of any sport, you wore Adidas, period. By the mid-1970s, Adidas controlled roughly 70% of the global athletic footwear market. 70%. Nike? Nike didn't even exist yet in any form they'd recognize. Adidas was the empire, the unquestioned, unchallenged, undisputed throne. And like every empire in history, that certainty became the very thing that would kill them. Because in 1964, on the other side of the world, a 26-year-old runner with 50 borrowed dollars had a very stupid idea. Phil Knight was a middle-distance runner at the University of Oregon. Not great, not terrible. The kind of athlete who understood the sport better than he could perform it. His coach, Bill Bowerman, was different. Bowerman was obsessed, not with winning races, but with the shoes his runners wore. He'd tear apart trainers on his kitchen table and rebuild them lighter, faster, meaner. In 1962, Knight flew to Japan. He walked into a meeting with Onitsuka Tiger, a Japanese running shoe company, and lied. Told them he represented Blue Ribbon Sports, a company that didn't exist. He placed an order for 300 shoes and paid for them with money he didn't have. When the shoes arrived, Knight sold them out of the trunk of his green Plymouth Valiant at track meets across Oregon. First-year revenue, $8,000. Bowerman poured liquid rubber into his wife's waffle iron to create a new kind of sole, ruined the iron, changed the industry. By 1971, Blue Ribbon Sports had a new name, Nike, named after the Greek goddess of victory. In 1977, a former NASA aerospace engineer named Frank Rudy walked into shoe companies with an idea that sounded insane. He wanted to put pressurized airbags inside running shoes. 23 companies said no. Some laughed. Most didn't even take the meeting. The idea was absurd. Air pockets that would burst, leak, collapse under pressure. Rudy had data. He had prototypes. Nobody cared. Then he walked into Nike. Phil Knight listened, squeezed the prototype, stood on it. It didn't pop. Knight said yes. Now, here's the part the history books gloss over. The record shows Rudy pitched broadly across the industry. Adidas, at that point, was the largest athletic shoe company in the world. They had the resources, the infrastructure, and the athletes. If anyone should have owned air cushion technology, it was them. They didn't take the meeting seriously. Nike did. And in 1979, the Nike Tailwind became the first air-soled running shoe in history. One meeting, one handshake, one empire that said no, and an insurgent that said yes. By 1984, Nike was dying. They'd grown too fast, overextended into casual shoes. Reebok had stolen the aerobics market. Inventory was piling up. Morale was collapsing. Revenue had flatlined. Phil Knight was staring at the abyss. Meanwhile, Adidas should have been accelerating, but they were drowning in their own succession crisis. Adi Dassler had died in 1978. His wife Kata took over. Then she died in 1984. Their son Horst, the political mastermind who'd built the FIFA pipeline, assumed control, but Horst was sick. Cancer. He wouldn't survive past 1987. The company was leaderless, paralyzed by family politics and internal power struggles. The empire that had owned 70% of the market was bleeding out from the inside. Two companies, both vulnerable, both desperate. And in that exact window of mutual weakness, a single human being changed everything. His name was Sonny Vaccaro, and he had one idea. Sonny Vaccaro was a Nike talent scout, former basketball promoter, a man who lived in gyms and locker rooms and understood one thing most shoe executives didn't. The future of sneakers wasn't on the track, it was on the court. In the 1984 NBA draft, a shooting guard from North Carolina named Michael Jordan went third overall to the Chicago Bulls. Every shoe company wanted him. Jordan himself wanted Adidas. He'd grown up wearing the three stripes. Adidas was his brand, but Adidas was paralyzed. Horst Dassler was dying. The decision makers couldn't align. One executive reportedly said, "Centers sell shoes, not guards." They offered Jordan nothing meaningful. Some accounts say they didn't offer at all. Vaccaro begged Nike to go all in, not a shared deal across multiple athletes, everything. The entire annual basketball budget, $2.5 million over 5 years for one 21-year-old rookie. Nike's board thought it was suicide. Jordan's mother, Dolores, told him to take the meeting. He did. Nike expected $3 million in Air Jordan sales over 3 years. They got $126 million in year 1. Then, the NBA did Nike the biggest favor in marketing history. They banned the shoe. The Air Jordan 1, in its black and red colorway, violated the NBA's uniform policy. Every team had to wear shoes that were at least 51% white. Jordan's weren't. The NBA fined Jordan $5,000 per game. Nike paid every single fine, gladly, because then they ran a commercial. A camera pans down Jordan's body. The black and red shoes fill the screen. A voiceover says, "On September 15th, Nike created a revolutionary new basketball shoe. On October 18th, the NBA threw them out of the game. Fortunately, the NBA can't keep you from wearing them." That ad turned a league penalty into a cultural weapon. Suddenly, the Air Jordan wasn't just a shoe, it was rebellion. Authority tried to suppress it. That made it irresistible. Nike didn't just sell sneakers after that. They sold defiance. And Adidas, the company that once put shoes on Jesse Owens in Hitler's stadium, watched a 21-year-old in Chicago do what they'd forgotten how to do: make people feel something. In 1988, Nike was no longer an insurgent. They needed an identity beyond Michael Jordan, something that could outlive any single athlete. Ad agency Whedon plus Kennedy got the job. The founder, Dan Whedon, needed a tagline, something universal, something that felt like a command and an invitation at the same time. He found it in the last words of a convicted murderer. Gary Gilmore, a death row inmate in Utah, stood before a firing squad in 1977. His final words, "Let's do it." Whedon changed one word: just do it. Nike spent $40 million on the campaign that year. Revenue jumped from $800 million to over $1 billion within 12 months. The tagline transcended sports. It became shorthand for ambition itself. Adidas had 3 stripes. Nike had 3 words. And those 3 words did something the 3 stripes never could. They made Nike feel like a belief system, not just a brand. You didn't buy Nike because of the technology. You bought Nike because of who you believed you could become. But here's what people forget. Adidas struck first in culture. In 1986, hip-hop group Run DMC released a track called My Adidas. Not a paid promotion, not a brand deal. Just 3 guys from Queens who loved their superstars. At a concert at Madison Square Garden, Run DMC told the crowd to hold up their Adidas. 20,000 shoes in the air. An Adidas executive was in the audience. His jaw hit the floor. Within weeks, Run DMC signed a $1.6 million endorsement deal, the first non-athlete sneaker deal in history. Adidas had accidentally invented cultural marketing, but they didn't understand what they'd built. Nike did. Nike studied it, systemized it, weaponized it. They turned athlete endorsements into narrative campaigns. Bo Jackson, Andre Agassi, Charles Barkley, each one a character, not just a spokesperson. Adidas had the streets. Nike took the story. And in the brand wars, the story always wins, because streets shift. trends rotate, but a story, the right story, told the right way, rewires how people see themselves. For 2 decades, the war settled into a cold stalemate. Nike dominated North America. Adidas owned soccer and Europe. Both made billions. Both grew complacent. Then, in 2013, a crack appeared in the fortress. Kanye West had been designing shoes with Nike since 2009. The Air Yeezy line was a cultural phenomenon. The Red October colorway resold for thousands. But Kanye wanted 2 things Nike refused to give him: royalties and creative control. Nike's position was simple. You're not an athlete. Kanye's response was simpler. He left, and he walked directly into Adidas. The deal was reportedly worth $10 million up front, with royalties Nike wouldn't match. Adidas gave Kanye what Nike wouldn't: a kingdom, full creative authority, his own sub-brand, revenue participation. The Yeezy Boost, 350, dropped in 2015. It sold out instantly, then again, and again. By 2021, Yeezy was generating nearly $2 billion in annual revenue. Adidas hadn't just signed an endorser, they'd acquired a cultural weapon of mass destruction. And like all weapons of mass destruction, the fallout was inevitable. By 2022, Kanye West was no longer just controversial, he was radioactive. Anti-Semitic statements, public meltdowns, increasingly erratic behavior. He dared Adidas to drop him, publicly, repeatedly. For weeks, Adidas said nothing. The revenue was too important. Yeezy accounted for nearly 8% of the company's total sales. Cutting him meant cutting a limb. On October 25th, 2022, they cut the limb. Adidas terminated the Yeezy partnership. Immediately, what followed was a financial bloodbath. 1.2 billion euros in unsold Yeezy inventory, sitting in warehouses with no brand attached. A $540 million net loss in 2023. The first operating loss in over 3 decades, the weapon Adidas built detonated in their hands. It took until early 2025 to liquidate the remaining stock. Adidas's CEO finally said, quote, "That episode is behind us." But the damage was structural, because while Adidas was bleeding, something else was happening, something neither Nike nor Adidas saw coming. The insurgents had arrived. While Nike and Adidas were locked in their decades-long siege, the battlefield changed underneath them. On Running, a Swiss brand founded in 2010, surged 59% in sales. Hoka, born in a French trail running lab, grew 45%. New Balance, the quiet centurion, hit $9.2 billion in 2025, a 19% jump. These brands didn't attack head-on. They flanked, untook the premium running market. Hoka captured the comfort revolution. New Balance weaponized nostalgia, turning dad shoes into a cultural signal that neither Nike's edge nor Adidas's street cred could compete with. Nike's US market share dropped from 35% to under 34%. Their stock plunged on a surprise sales forecast decline. Adidas shares fell 33% in 12 months. The two giants that spent a century trying to destroy each other were now being devoured by a swarm of insurgents using the exact same playbook Nike used against Adidas in 1964. Hungry, fast, unafraid. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes with a vengeance. Here's what 100 years of war teaches you. Adidas didn't lose because Nike was better. Nike didn't win because they had more money. The same patterns repeat across every chapter of this file. Console wars, cola wars, Streaming wars. The dominant player always has the same fatal flaw: certainty. Adidas was certain they didn't need Air Soles, certain they didn't need Michael Jordan, certain that Kanye West was worth the risk. Certainty is what makes you stop listening to the aerospace engineer with the weird idea. Stop returning the call from the 21-year-old rookie. Stop imagining that the thing you built could collapse. Nike understood something Adidas forgot. Dominance is not a position. It's a state of paranoia. The moment you believe you've won, you've already started losing. Phil Knight sold shoes from a car trunk. Now Nike's market cap is over $100 billion. But the brand's eating them alive right now? They're selling shoes the same way. Hungry, lean, unencumbered by legacy. The war between Nike and Adidas was never about shoes. It was about fear. Who kept it? Who lost it? This has been Rivalry Files. If this briefing did what it was designed to do, if it changed how you see these two logos, then you already know what to do. Subscribe. Because the next file is already being compiled, and the rivalry inside it is worse. File closed.